The silent cry the crystal spires of Ethros once reached toward the stars like fingers of pure light, their surfaces singing with harmonic frequencies that could be heard across 3 star systems. Now they lay shattered, their songs reduced to dying whispers as smoke rose from the ruins of what had been the most beautiful world in the galaxy. Dr. Kalen Voss pressed his crystalline palm against the viewing port of his hidden laboratory, watching as another Dominion dropship descended toward the surface. His translucent blue skin flickered with patterns of distress, the natural bioluminescence of his people betraying emotions he could no longer contain. For 50 years, the Zephyrians had endured the occupation. For 50 years, they had watched their civilization crumble under the iron fist of the Dominion Empire. The Dominion had swept across the galaxy like a plague of metal and fire. They conquered not for resources or territory, but for the simple joy of domination. Species after species had fallen before their advance, their unique cultures erased, their people enslaved or eliminated. The Zephyrians, with their peaceful nature and energy-based technology, had lasted longer than most, but even they were now facing the inevitable end. Elder Thyra materialized beside him, her ancient form barely holding together as her life force waned. The old leader had lived through the golden age of Zephyrian civilization, had seen their people spread across a dozen worlds, their crystal cities pulsing with the rhythm of pure energy. Now she was among the last of her kind, hiding in the deep caverns beneath Ethros' surface. The northern districts have fallen, she whispered, her voice like wind through broken glass. Commander Zortha's forces are conducting what they call final cleansing operations. They're not even bothering to take prisoners anymore. Kalen's luminous patterns shifted to deep purple, the Zephyrian equivalent of overwhelming grief. He had lost his mate, his offspring, his entire research team to the Dominion's systematic extermination. Only his work kept him going now, the desperate hope that somewhere in the vast galaxy there might be someone willing to help. The ancient archives, he said, suddenly turning away from the window. You said there were records of other worlds, other species that the Dominion hasn't found yet. Thyra's aged form flickered with surprise. Those records are thousands of years old, Kalen. Most of those worlds have probably been discovered and conquered by now, but not all of them. Kalen moved to his workstation, where a massive energy core hummed with contained power. This was the last intact Zephyrian power source on the planet, salvaged from the ruins of the capital city. There was one world in the archives, wasn't there? A small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. Earth, Thyra whispered, her memory reaching back across millennia. The third world in the Sol system. Our explorers found it during the Great Expansion, but she paused, her patterns shifting to confused orange. But we never made contact. The species there was young, primitive, they hadn't even achieved space travel yet. Kalen's hands moved across his instruments with desperate precision. That was 3,000 years ago. If they've survived, if they've grown... He looked up at the Elder, his patterns now burning with fierce determination. They might be our only hope. The laboratory shook as another explosion rocked the cavern system above them. The Dominion was getting closer, their sensors eventually finding every hiding place. Kalen estimated they had perhaps hours before Commander Zortha's forces breached their sanctuary. Even if they exist, even if they've advanced, Thyra said, her voice heavy with the weight of despair, what could one young species do against the Dominion? They've conquered 90% of the galaxy. They have fleets that could blot out the stars. I don't know. Kalen admitted, his patterns shifting to the soft blue of hope mixed with sorrow. But I have to try. We've lost everything else. Our cities, our people, our future. If there's even the smallest chance that someone out there might hear our cry for help, he began the delicate process of configuring the energy core for quantum transmission. The technology was ancient, based on principles the Zephyrians had discovered in their earliest days of space exploration. It could send a message across impossible distances, but the power requirements were enormous. Using it would drain their last energy source, leaving them defenseless against the Dominion's final assault. You're talking about sacrificing our last hope of survival, Thyra said, but her tone suggested she understood the necessity. Our last hope of survival isn't hiding in these caves, Kalen replied, his patterns now steady and resolved. It's out there in the stars. If these humans have grown, as we hope, if they've developed space, travel, weapons, the will to fight, maybe they can do what we couldn't. The quantum transmitter began to glow, its crystalline structure resonating with frequencies that made the air itself sing. Kalen input the coordinates from the ancient archives, hoping beyond hope that Earth still existed, that humanity still thrived, that his message would reach someone who could understand it. Above them, the sounds of battle grew closer. Dominion pulse rifles discharged in steady patterns, their energy signatures unmistakable. The Zephyrian resistance was making their final stand, buying time for those still hidden in the deep places of their world. What will you tell them? Thyra asked, moving closer to the transmitter as its power built toward the transmission threshold. Kalen closed his eyes, his patterns shifting through the entire spectrum of Zephyrian emotion. The truth, that we're dying, that the Dominion will find Earth eventually, as they find every world, that their only hope is to fight back before it's too late. The transmitter reached full power, its harmonics now so intense that the crystal walls of the laboratory began to resonate in sympathy. Kalen placed his hands on the control interface, feeling the vast energies flowing through his being. This would be his last act, he knew. The power discharge would drain not just the energy core, but his own life force as well. People of Earth, he spoke into the transmitter, his voice carrying across the impossible void between stars. My name is Kalen Voss of the Zephyrian people. If you can hear this message, if you have grown beyond your small world, then you must listen carefully. Our world is dying. The Dominion Empire has enslaved or destroyed every species they have encountered. They will find you eventually as they have found us. The laboratory door exploded inward, and Dominion soldiers poured through the opening. Their black armor gleamed in the transmitter's light, their weapons trained on the two surviving Zephyrians. Commander Zorth himself stepped through the breach, his scarred face twisted with satisfaction. So, this is where the last of the Crystal Singers have been hiding, he said, his voice rough with years of commanding genocide. What's this device? Some kind of weapon? Kalen didn't stop speaking into the transmitter. We were a peaceful people, lovers of art and science. We thought diplomacy could save us. We were wrong. The only language the Dominion understands is force. If you have weapons, if you have ships, if you have the will to fight for your freedom, then you must act now. Zorth raised his weapon, but hesitated as he realized what the Zephyrian was doing. He's sending a message. Cut the transmission. We have coordinates to our world, Kalen continued, his patterns now blazing with the last of his life force. If any of our people survive, if you can help them, but more importantly, you must prepare for war. The Dominion comes for all worlds eventually. They will strip your planet bare, enslave your people, erase your culture. Don't let them. Fight back. Show them that some species refuse to kneel. The energy core reached critical discharge. Kalen felt his life force flowing into the transmission, adding his very essence to the message racing across the galaxy. My people called your world Earth. We pray that you have grown strong, that you have not forgotten how to fight. The galaxy needs you. We need you. Please, don't let the darkness win. The transmitter exploded in a burst of pure energy, its quantum field collapsing as the last of the Zephyrian technology died. Kalen fell to his knees, his crystalline form already beginning to fade. Thyra knelt beside him, her ancient patterns shifting to the deep gold of honor and sacrifice. Did it work? She whispered. Kalen's patterns flickered one last time, a faint smile of blue and silver. It will reach them. Whether they can help, that's up to them now. Commander Zorth stood over the dying Zephyrian, his expression unreadable. You've just doomed another world to our attention. When we extract those coordinates from your transmission, we'll hunt down this Earth and add it to our conquests. Maybe, Kalen whispered, his light fading. Or maybe maybe you've finally found someone who won't make it easy for you. The last Zephyrian scientist died as his people had lived in hope and defiance. His message raced across the galaxy, carrying with it the dreams of a dying species and the coordinates to both salvation and destruction. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, a small blue world orbited a yellow star, unaware that its greatest test was about to begin. Eldathyra looked up at the Dominion commander, her ancient eyes reflecting the wisdom of ages. You think you've won, but you don't understand what you've just unleashed. The humans, they're not like us. They're not like any species you've conquered. They're survivors, fighters, builders of impossible things. You've just sent them an invitation to war. Zortha's laugh was cold and mechanical. One primitive world against the might of the Dominion, they'll fall like all the others. But as the Dominion forces secured the ruined laboratory, none of them noticed the faint resonance still echoing through the quantum field, carrying Kalen's message toward a blue world where a young species was about to discover they were not alone in the universe. The awakening Thunder Captain Maya Chun floated in the zero gravity of Deep Space Monitoring Station Prometheus, watching the endless dance of stars beyond the massive observation ports. For 15 years, she had been humanity's ear to the cosmos, listening for any sign that Earth was not alone in the universe. The station, positioned at the edge of the solar system, represented humanity's greatest achievement in space exploration, bristling with sensors and communication arrays that could detect signals from across the galaxy. Most days brought nothing but the background hum of space, the occasional burst from a pulsar, or the fading echoes of ancient cosmic events. But today was different. Today, the quantum resonance detector was singing with frequencies that made Maya's heart race with excitement and terror. Captain Chun, you need to see this immediately, called Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's chief xenobiologist, her voice tight, with barely controlled amazement. We've got something coming in on the deep space array, and it's definitely artificial. Maya propelled herself toward the communication center, where Elena and her team were hunched over displays showing waveform patterns unlike anything in their databases. The signal was structured, complex, carrying layers of information that suggested not just intelligence, but advanced technology. How long has it been transmitting? Maya asked, settling into the monitoring chair. The signal arrived 6 hours ago, but it's taken our quantum computers this long to decode the base translation matrix, Elena replied, her fingers flying over the controls. Captain, whoever sent this designed it to be understood by any species capable of receiving quantum transmissions. They wanted us to understand. Maya activated the playback system, and Kalen's voice filled the communication center. At first, the sounds were alien, musical tones that rose and fell in patterns that seemed almost like singing. But as the translation software worked, the words became clear, and Maya felt her world shift on its axis. The desperate plea of a dying scientist reached across the void, telling of a galaxy under siege, of species enslaved or destroyed, of a final hope cast into the darkness. When the message ended, the communication center fell silent, except for the quiet hum of electronics and the soft breathing of humans who had just learned they were not alone in the universe. Replay it, Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. They listened to Kalen's message 3 more times, each repetition adding weight to the reality of what they had discovered. Humanity had spent centuries wondering if they were alone in the cosmos. Now, they knew they weren't, but their neighbors were dying, and something called the Dominion Empire was coming for Earth. Get me Admiral Stone, Maya ordered, her training taking over even as her mind reeled with the implications. Priority Alpha, and start analyzing everything we can extract from this signal. I want to know about this Dominion, about the Zephyrians, about everything. Within hours, Maya found herself in a virtual conference room with the highest-ranking officials of Earth's United Defense Force. Admiral Marcus Stone, a veteran of the Mars colonial wars, leaned forward as the alien message played for the dozenth time that day. "So, let me understand this correctly," Stone said when the playback ended. "We've received a distress call from an alien species that's being exterminated by a galactic empire. This empire has conquered 90% of the known galaxy, and they're eventually going to find Earth. That's the situation as we understand it, sir. Maya replied from her position aboard Prometheus. Our analysis teams have been working on the technical data embedded in the signal. The quantum transmission technology used to send this message is centuries ahead of our current capabilities. Dr. Elena Vasquez activated her screen, showing complex diagrams and energy readings. The power requirements alone suggest a civilization far more advanced than ours. If this Dominion Empire can travel between stars as routine as we travel between cities, they possess technology that makes our best ships look like toys. General Sarah Mitchell, Earth's leading military strategist, spoke up from her position at the Pentagon. Our current fleet consists of 12 deep space cruisers, 47 system defense platforms, and about 200 smaller vessels. Against an empire that's conquered most of the galaxy, we're looking at impossible odds. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had barely managed to establish colonies on Mars and the outer planets. Their fastest ships could reach the nearest stars, but it would take decades. Against an enemy that could cross galactic distances, Earth seemed pathetically vulnerable. But Admiral Stone surprised everyone by standing up, his weathered face hardening with determination. You know what I'm hearing in all this? I'm hearing that somewhere out there, an alien scientist thought we were worth saving. He looked at a galaxy full of conquered worlds and decided to send his last message to us. That tells me he saw something in humanity that even we might not recognize. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. What are you thinking, Admiral? I'm thinking we don't let him down, Stone replied firmly. We've got maybe 5 years before this Dominion finds us. Based on their expansion patterns, that's 5 years to prepare. 5 years to turn ourselves into something they won't expect. Dr. Vasquez looked skeptical. Admiral, with respect, even if we mobilize every resource on Earth, how do we fight an empire that spans the galaxy? We don't fight them like a traditional enemy, Stone said, his eyes gleaming with the fire of inspiration. We fight them like humans. We improvise, we adapt, we survive, and first, we help the people who asked for our help. General Mitchell's eyebrows rose. You want to send a rescue mission to an alien world? I want to send a message, Stone corrected. A message that says humanity doesn't abandon its allies. If there are survivors on this Ethros, if they're still fighting, then they need know they're not alone. Maya stared at the Admiral, understanding dawning in her mind. You're talking about changing the entire course of human development. We've been explorers, researchers, builders. You want to turn us into warriors. I want to turn us into what we need to be to survive, Stone replied. The message from this Kalen Voss tells us that diplomacy failed for the Zephyrians. Peace failed. Only force will work against the Dominion. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity, unlike anything in human history. Every shipyard in the solar system received unlimited funding. The experimental faster-than-light drive program was accelerated from a 20-year timeline to 6 months. Most importantly, every strategic mind on Earth was brought together to answer one crucial question. How does a young species survive against a galactic empire? Maya found herself reassigned to Earth Command as the head of the newly formed Alien Contact Division. Her first task was to establish two-way communication with any surviving Zephyrians on Ethros. Human engineers worked around the clock to build a quantum transmitter based on the principles embedded in Kalen's message. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. James Wright, a military historian specializing in asymmetric warfare, had been studying humanity's most successful underdog victories throughout history. His analysis revealed patterns that gave the Earth forces hope. Every time in human history that a technologically superior force has been defeated by a supposedly inferior one, it's happened because the advanced enemy couldn't adapt to unexpected tactics, Wright explained to the assembled Earth Command staff. The Mongols defeated advanced Chinese armies because they refused to fight by accepted rules. Colonial militias defeated professional European armies because they wouldn't stand in lines to be shot. What are you suggesting? Admiral Stone asked that Wright's expression became fierce with determination. We don't try to match their technology. We make them fight by our rules. Humanity has spent its entire existence learning how to survive against impossible odds. We're innovators, improvisers, survivors. The Dominion has conquered civilizations, but they've never faced anything like us. Maya's team finally established contact with Ethros 4 months after receiving Kalen's message. The voice that answered their quantum transmission was young, female, and filled with wonder that bordered on disbelief. This is Lyrian joined her at the viewport, her luminous patterns now peaceful in a way that would have been impossible during the dark years of occupation. In her hands, she carried a quantum crystal containing Kalen's original message, now preserved as a monument to the courage of one desperate scientist who had refused to let hope die. He saved us all, Lyrian said softly, her telepathic voice carrying harmonics of gratitude that resonated in Maya's mind. Not just the Zephyrians, but every species that will never know slavery. Because of what he started, Maya nodded, watching as another liberation fleet departed for a distant star system where people waited for freedom. The galaxy was still vast and dangerous. There were other empires out there that needed to learn the lesson the Dominion had learned too late. But now, when civilizations cried out for help, they were no longer alone. The Dominion controlled through fear, Maya said, her voice carrying the weight of hard-won wisdom. They made species believe that resistance was futile, that survival meant submission. We showed them something they'd forgotten. What's that? Lyrian asked, though her telepathic abilities already sensed the answer. That some species don't know how to quit. Maya replied with a smile that carried the spirit of every human who had ever faced impossible odds and decided to fight anyway. That sometimes, when the darkness seems complete, all it takes is one voice calling out across the void to remind everyone that the light isn't dead yet. Through the viewport, they could see Earth's children spreading across the galaxy. Human ships carried more than weapons and supplies. They carried hope, the unbreakable conviction that no evil was too great to resist, no enemy too powerful to defeat. They had kept their promise to an old alien scientist who had died, believing he had doomed the galaxy, when in truth he had saved it. The stars no longer fell silent when civilizations faced extinction. Somewhere in the galaxy, humans were always listening, always ready to answer the call, and wherever they went, they carried with them the one thing that no empire could crush, no matter how powerful: the absolute refusal to let darkness triumph, while good people still drew breath. That in the deep archives of the liberated worlds, scholars would write of a day when Earth roared its defiance across the galaxy. They would tell of how a young species, barely out of its cradle world, had torn through the heavens to save strangers they had never met. They would remember that when hope was lost, when all seemed dark, humanity had answered the call with thunder and lightning, proving that the universe still had heroes willing to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. The Dominion Empire crumbled not from military defeat, but from the realization that their victims were no longer alone. Across 1,000 worlds, the enslaved remembered what freedom meant. The oppressed recalled the power of unity. The conquered rediscovered the strength that comes from refusing to surrender, and at the center of it all, a small blue world orbited a yellow star, its people having learned that their greatest destiny lay not in reaching the stars, but in ensuring that the light of hope would never die in the cosmic dark. Earth had roared, and the galaxy would never be the same. Rian of the Zephyrian resistance, the translated voice crackled through the communicator. Are you truly the humans that Kalen tried to reach? Are you really going to help us? Maya gripped the microphone, feeling the weight of her species' first words to another intelligent race. We're coming, Lyrian. Tell your people to hold on. Earth doesn't abandon its friends. But you're so far away. Lyrian's voice carried the exhaustion of a people who had fought for too long. Even if you have ships, it would take years to reach us. We'll be there in 6 months, Maya promised, knowing that every eye in the command center is on her. We're bringing everything we have. As the connection ended, Admiral Stone activated the fleet-wide communication system. All vessels, all personnel, this is Admiral Stone. Operation Distant Thunder is now active. We launch for Ethros in 3 months. We're about to become the first human beings to travel to another star system, and we're going there to fight. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers across Earth and Mars. Scientists worked impossible hours to perfect the faster-than-light drive. Engineers pushed the boundaries of human technology, creating weapons and ships designed for interstellar warfare. But the most important development was something that couldn't be quantified or measured. For the first time in human history, the entire species was united by a single purpose. The message from Kalen Voss had awakened something in humanity that had been dormant for generations, the absolute refusal to let evil triumph while good people still drew breath. Maya stood on the observation deck of the UES Defiance, the flagship of humanity's first interstellar fleet. Around her, 200 ships prepared for the journey to Ethros. They weren't the most advanced vessels in the galaxy, but they carried something no other species had possessed for centuries. Hope backed by the unbreakable will to fight. Think we can do it? Admiral Stone asked, joining her at the viewport. Maya thought of Kalen's voice, the desperation and courage intertwined in his final message. She thought of Lyrian, waiting in the darkness for a salvation that had seemed impossible. Most of all, she thought of what made humanity unique in a galaxy that had forgotten. How to resist? We're going to show them what happens when you threaten Earth, she said firmly. And we're going to remind the galaxy that some species don't know how to surrender. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying with them not just weapons and soldiers, but something the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries, a species that refused to accept defeat, no matter how impossible the odds. Behind them, Earth's remaining defenses prepared for the day when the Dominion would come looking for the world that had dared to answer the call for help. Ahead lay Ethros, where the last Zephyrians waited in the ruins of their civilization, counting down the days until either liberation or extinction arrived from the stars. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their absolute refusal to let others suffer while they had the power to help. When Earth roared the Dominion extermination, fleet hung in Ethros' orbit like a swarm of mechanical vultures, their dark holes blotting out the stars. Supreme Overlord Krax observed the dying world below through neural interfaces that connected him directly to his flagship sensors. After 50 years of efficient conquest, the Zephyrian resistance had finally forced his hand. The Crystal Singers had proven surprisingly stubborn, but their rebellion would end today. Begin atmospheric bombardment. Krax commanded through the HiveMind network that linked all Dominion forces. Eliminate all remaining population centers. Leave no structure standing. The first wave of orbital strikes had just begun when alarms screamed throughout the Dominion command ship. Impossible energy signatures appeared at the edge of the system, growing stronger by the second. Krax's cybernetic implants focused on the tactical display, struggling to process what his sensors were reporting. 200 ships had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Their design was unlike anything in the Dominion databases. They were angular and aggressive, where Dominion vessels were sleek and efficient. But there was something about their approach pattern that triggered ancient warnings in Krax's enhanced consciousness. These ships moved like predators. Unknown vessels, Krax transmitted on all frequencies, his voice carrying the authority of 1,000 conquered worlds. You are entering a Dominion pacification zone. Identify yourselves and withdraw immediately or be destroyed. The response came not in the formal diplomatic protocols the Dominion expected, but in words that cut through the communication channels like a blade forged from pure defiance. This is Admiral Marcus Stone of the United Earth Forces, the voice declared with absolute conviction. We're here for our friends. You have exactly 60 seconds to cease your bombardment and withdraw from the system. Krax's mandibles clicked in confusion. Earth, the primitive world whose coordinates they had extracted from the dead Zephyrian's transmission. According to intelligence reports, the humans had barely achieved interstellar travel. Yet here they were, fielding a fleet that moved with the precision of a military force that had never known defeat. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Captain Maya Chun stood watching the massive Dominion fleet turn to face them. The tactical display showed impossible odds, over 400 enemy vessels against their 200. By every rule of military logic, this should have been a massacre. Instead, Maya smiled with the fierce joy of a species that had spent millennia learning how to fight against impossible odds. All ships, Maya transmitted to the human fleet, implement protocol Chaos Storm. Show them what humans do when we're supposed to lose. The human fleet suddenly scattered in all directions, their formation dissolving into what appeared to be random movement. Instead of maintaining defensive positions, they accelerated directly toward the Dominion fleet, their courses seemingly chaotic and unpredictable. The Dominion tactical computers struggled to plot intercept courses for targets that refused to behave logically. Maya's ship dove beneath the Dominion formation, its experimental armor absorbing energy blasts that should have vaporized it. But human engineers had learned something crucial during their preparation. Dominion weapons were designed for precision strikes against targets that followed predictable patterns. Against ships that moved like living things, darting and weaving through space, their accuracy dropped dramatically. On Ethros' surface, Lyrian crouched in the ruins of what had once been a crystal garden, listening to the battle raging above through a salvage communication array. The young Zephyrian had spent months organizing the underground resistance, preparing for this moment. As human ships began breaking through the Dominion blockade, she activated a hidden transmitter. All resistance cells execute Operation Resonance, she broadcast to the scattered survivors. The humans are here. Time to remind the Dominion that Zephyrians are not extinct. Across Ethros, the surviving Crystal Singers emerged from hiding places they had occupied for decades. They struck at Dominion infrastructure with surgical precision, targeting power distribution nodes, communication relays, and orbital defense platforms. Most importantly, they began overloading the neural dampener network that had suppressed their natural abilities for 50 years. Maya felt the change the moment the first dampener overloaded. A whisper in her mind, alien but somehow familiar, speaking words of gratitude and desperate hope. More voices joined as additional dampeners failed, until the mental space around Ethros filled with the collective consciousness of a people refusing to die quietly. Admiral Stone, Maya called over the fleet communication system, were getting telepathic contact from the surface. The Zephyrians are coordinating with us directly. Stone's weathered face split into a grin that would have made his Viking ancestors proud. Then let's give them something to coordinate with. All ships begin atmospheric entry. We're taking this fight to the ground. Krax watched in growing horror as his perfect formation collapsed into chaos. The human ships fought like nothing he had ever encountered. They used debris as weapons, rammed Dominion vessels with their own hulls, and seemed to take perverse joy in tactics that should have been suicide. Worse, his ground forces were reporting coordinated attacks from supposedly extinct Zephyrian populations. Impossible, he chittered to his subordinates. The slave species cannot coordinate without our command network. It is not in their nature. But even as he spoke, more Dominion installations went dark across Ethros' surface. The humans had somehow inspired the Zephyrians to remember what freedom looked like, and the result was a level of resistance the Dominion had never encountered. Maya's ship punched through Ethros' atmosphere in a ball of fire, its heat shields glowing white-hot from the violent entry. Around her, other human vessels followed, their pilots whooping with joy as they dove toward the planet's surface. Behind them, Dominion fighters pursued, but the human ships moved through the atmosphere like they were born to it, dancing between mountain peaks and skimming canyon floors in ways that sent their pursuers crashing into obstacles. The first human Zephyrian meeting took place in the ruins of what had once been Ethros' capital. Maya stepped from her crashed ship, her combat armor scarred from the fighting. to find herself face to face with a slender figure whose translucent blue skin shimmered with patterns of light. "I am Lyrian," the Zephyrian said, her telepathic abilities allowing her to speak perfect English. "Kaelin would be amazed to see this day. You actually came." Maya removed her helmet, revealing a face streaked with sweat and determination. "We got his message. All of it, including the part about never giving up." Around them, the sounds of battle raged as human and Zephyrian forces coordinated their attacks on remaining Dominion strongholds. The aliens' telepathic networks allowed for perfect communication, while human tactical flexibility kept the enemy constantly off balance. Krax made his final mistake when he attempted to negotiate, following standard Dominion protocol for dealing with primitive species. He opened a communication channel to the human fleet, his voice carrying the authority of 1,000 conquered worlds. "Unknown humans," he transmitted, "you have interfered with Dominion operations. Withdraw immediately and accept vassal status or watch this world burn." Admiral Stone's response became legendary throughout the galaxy. Counteroffer: "Kiss my human ass." The final battle took place at the Dominion Command Citadel, a massive fortress that had dominated Ethros' skyline for half a century. Human Marines and Zephyrian resistance fighters stormed its walls side by side, their combined assault overwhelming defenses designed to repel conventional attacks. Maya and Lyrian fought their way to the Citadel's core, where Krax waited with his elite guard. The Dominion Overlord towered over them, his cybernetic enhancements gleaming in the light of fires burning throughout his once invincible fortress. "You cannot comprehend what you have done," Krax hissed through vocal synthesizers. "The Dominion spans 10,000 worlds. We will return with fleets that will darken your skies." Maya stepped forward, her plasma rifle trained on the alien commander. "Let them come. We'll be ready." But it was Lyrian who delivered the killing blow. Her telepathic abilities, finally free to express 50 years of rage and grief, overwhelmed Krax's neural networks. The Dominion Overlord collapsed, his enhanced mind unable to process the psychic assault of a people he had never seen as anything more than property. News of the Dominion defeat spread through their communication networks. Something unprecedented happened. On worlds across the galaxy, enslaved species began to rise. The Dominion had maintained control through the illusion of invincibility, but that illusion shattered the moment humans proved that the conquerors could bleed. 0.5 years later, Maya stood on the observation deck of the joint human-Zephyrian space station orbiting Earth. Below her, the blue world that Kaelin had tried to save now served as the headquarters for the Galactic Liberation Alliance. Ships from dozens of former Dominion slave worlds came and went, their crews training in the guerrilla tactics that had won the war.